Convictions. An in-depth look at convictions for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. Each character begins with 1 to 3 convictions, human values they attempt to uphold even after death. The specifics of these convictions are up to the player. They might reflect a religious code, a personal ethical core, a vampiric myth, or just things that the character does or balks at doing without ever even really considering their philosophical weight. The storyteller should feel free to reject suggested convictions on the grounds of taste or of subtlety for the type of story they intend. Some examples of convictions might include, thou shalt not kill, kill only the unworthy, unbelievers, and fair combat and self-defense. Never expose children to violence. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Disobedience is dishonor. Protect the innocent from harm. Courage is the highest virtue. Always keep your sworn word. The truth is sacred. Thou shalt not lie. Slavery is evil. Obey authority. My country, right or wrong. None may control me. Never do drugs or drink alcohol. Thou shalt not torture. The guilty must be punished. For each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs. Rob the rich, give to the poor. Reject wealth, for it corrupts. Never act against another. Insert your own group, faith, or sect. Always aid women in need. Stand up for the disenfranchised. Respect, insert religion here, as sacred and obey its moral laws. Storyteller suggestions. Be careful what your players choose as a conviction. Do not allow very open-ended or vague convictions like, I always do what I want, or a chain is only strong as its weakest link. Even if it sounds good, make sure that you clarify with the player the core meaning of their conviction. Always do what I want means that anytime the player does something, he can fall back on his conviction to remove a stain. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link is just too vague to know what it could possibly use for properly, except in rare circumstances. If, as a storyteller, you do not understand what the conviction means or how the player means to utilize it, have them explain it to you and help them make it better. A lot of the time, when a player chooses things like these as convictions, they either do not understand how convictions are used or they're trying to play the system to be able to not risk even gaining stains. Incurring stains in the service of your conviction mitigates some of the stains. If the tenant was violated in the service of conviction, reduce the stains gained by 1 or more. Violating a conviction may also, at the storyteller's discretion, incur 1 or more of the stains as well. An example of this is if the character would have the conviction, my family always comes first, and a gang enters the parents' home of the character to take them hostage. The character kills 2 of the 4 gang members, stopping them. The player receives 1 stain for each person killed, protecting his family, and 1 extra stain for doing so brutally to one of them. 1 stain for each would be removed for following the conviction, but the 3rd point would stay as the brutality had nothing to do with his conviction. Now, if this same character later in the game decided not to go protect his family at some point, I could actually award that character a stain for not upholding his conviction. Players, why have any convictions? In truth, if you had 0, would not have any touchstones, they are always a worry for your character, and the mechanic that removes any stains doesn't even remove them all. So why bother at all? Because this really helps build your character's personality. Convictions are a character's values. These tell you and the storyteller what kind of person that you are. Then, the touchstones that represent your convictions are a representation of those values that help you hold on to your humanity. I have yet to have a player that just had 1 conviction. Once a player understands the process, they usually get 3 ideas to start with, and sometimes even have to choose their top 3. Storytellers, how to use convictions. There are several ways that the storyteller can use convictions. When the player gains a stain, and they are following a conviction then gained, lower the stain by 1 or more. This, of course, is the main mechanic for convictions. Do not use convictions as a punishment. Use them as something positive. So do not just wait for the player to break a conviction and then give them a stain. Add an element into the game for that player to say, there is no way I could ever do that, and I cannot be part of this if any of you decide to go through with it. Believe me, players like moments like these when their characters have a moral stand. Have their touchstone be relatable to their conviction. When they watch their touchstone or talk to them, have the touchstone do something that relates to their conviction. The player might need to be reminded of the importance of their touchstone and the relationship to the conviction. Also choose wisely when creating touchstones relationships to the conviction. When the player says touchstone is Uncle Bob, ask why. This is twofold. First, it creates a bond between the conviction and the touchstone, and second, it's to give you, the storyteller, ideas on how to incorporate making the conviction relatable to that touchstone. Make their conviction important to the story, or at least include something into a session that will let them know that their conviction is included. Nothing is more aggravating than being told something is important and then it isn't included in the story at all. Although this applies to most things in the game, convictions is one of the more important things to do this with. How to make convictions more important than just a mechanic. You come to a fork in the road, a decision that needs to be made. Do you turn left? Do you turn right? Do you stay where you are and not choose a side? If you have a personal conviction in the matter, you know what you have to do. A person with a personal conviction is convinced that something is true and stands on principle, regardless of the situation and regardless of the consequences. Personal convictions reveal a lot about who a person is. Touchstones are a representation of these values that the character holds dear. This makes touchstones a way of holding on to that character's humanity. This is the reason why touchstones getting damaged or destroyed cause stains to the character. If a vampire were to lose all touchstones, they would have 0 convictions. Mechanically speaking, they are not bad off, but realistically, they have lost touch with a large part of their humanity. They have lost their human values and the people that had held them in value to them. This is why it is important to install in your players why their character's sires would stress the importance of protecting their touchstones above all else, and if something were to happen, to replace them as soon as possible. I hope that you liked this video and have learned something new, or at least something that you would like to try in your own game.